Well, as you can probably tell, I've traded my usual natural, outdoor, peaceful settings for something quite a lot different. You actually have to think quite a lot about how those lights are going to move through your scene. Because I need to time this shot just perfectly, I'm actually going to pull out a cable release. On this very warm night tonight, I'm going to be heading out to 3 locations where you can get absolutely wonderful vantage points of the CN Tower. My goal is to show off a little bit of the compositional technique that comes with light trail photography, because you have to think a little bit differently about how you do it. Let's get into it. Well, I've come to this parking lot here on Queens Quay, and I have to say I'm a little disappointed. All of the things that I read were pointing towards being able to get up on the roof, but that's not possible now. So I'm having to compose a shot against this sort of grating here. And actually, it's working out okay. I'm going to compose a shot where I'm getting the CN Tower kind of in between this grating here, and hopefully I'll be able to show that, you know, clearly kind of where I am, but still be able to get the light trails and all the colors and everything. See how that goes. So let's talk about some settings. With this being a long exposure, I want to maximize the shutter speed, which normally means that I want to take the aperture down as small as it can get. Well, this 14mm prime lens can only go to f/16, so that's what I'm going to need to take it to. But I think I can probably get 20 seconds, maybe let's call it even 30 seconds of exposure time at that aperture. When you're doing a long exposure that includes light trails, you actually have to think quite a lot about how those lights are going to move through your scene. And that is the thing that you're going to need to compose. For instance, I'm right down in front of an intersection here. I don't want all these cars to be stationary, so I have to think about timing my shot so that right after the light changes and the cars are allowed to go, that's when my shot, you know, can start.
For this photo, the light trails aren't a particularly strong element in the frame. I do have the light trails here, and I really enjoy just how bright this bottom section is. The red and white light trails on here are barely visible, barely noticeable really. Also the Rogers Center and the CN Tower, they don't themselves have light trails, but they are giving off a sort of nice glow to this, to this composition. Now, what I really actually like is just how well these sort of bars of this grating kind of draw lines towards this top section of the CN Tower, and you almost get kind of a natural progression in this direction, where you've got the light trails coming up, then you're sort of hit by this grating, which then takes you down into this side.
All right, well, I'm a few kilometers away at even louder location. I've just been taking a couple of shots here, trying to line up composition, going for something a little bit different than what I had previously. I'm going to squish this thing down into like a 16:9. Well, I think probably I might want a little more telephoto for this shot, but I do like the way that it is. Again, trying to think of the composition in terms of where the light is going to streak across the frame, less than, the actual objects, the elements that are in the frame to begin with.
The composition in this photo is all about a leading line and balance. So you've got this strong line going up to the core of the city, but it points at the CN Tower, and it's supported by a line of these lights and of this sort of wire here. and on this side here. So everything is kind of pointing in that direction. It's good that the taillights are on this side because this red section here leaves it kind of empty looking compared to the white on this side. So you do really have this progression of sort of, the close objects on this side leading to the far objects in the distance. Actually, I've sort of composed this shot not really any differently to how I would compose a waterfall. I've got this sort of main element here of light, the thing that I want you to be looking towards, and then, the sort of area of the waterfall coming down, but then I've extended that so that it really bleeds out all the way to the edges of the frame. And you really do get this piece here that's just sort of like wide, triangular, pointing up in this direction here. Now I've cropped this so that I'm placing this very large sun star on this sort of visual line, which is balanced for the CN Tower on this line. Now, I'm not really using a rule of thirds here. Actually, as you can see, there's a line right across the center, but there is a line created here by the other sun stars. It goes across the frame here. And this, of course, leads you to believe that there's a line here of really like what is close to the viewer as they look at it. If we just talk about, what's sort of empty and what's sort of filled, you really do get, right off the bat, this part here is sort of filled right in the image, but it's mirrored by an empty space on the exact opposite side. Now, this line follows, and so you also get a very bright area on this side, and these three kind of lead up to the CN Tower. But right around that, you also have another sort of empty frame over here, and you've got another full sort of area over in this direction. Again, you have more sort of empty space along the top, and that's mirrored with this kind of dull looking area across the bottom here. But finally, right beside the CN Tower and really in between these two elements is this, this empty space right here. And if you look across this line, you'll see that really you're seeing the city kind of crushed down by this empty space where only the CN Tower, this main focal point, sort of sticks up.
While I'm here at my last location of the night, this one, such an iconic location, just really across the street from where the CN Tower and the sort of Rogers complex and things are. This one's going to be a little bit different from a composition standpoint because the other two photos that I took, they were really quite far from the subjects that I was going to get. But this one, I'm going to be just a few feet away from the lights of this streetcar. And so actually I'm going to use this streetcar wiping through my frame to help frame up the CN Tower in the background, and I'll position it in such a way where I can get a little vanishing point of the streetcar kind of disappearing into the distance. There's one coming now, but I'm looking for one coming the other direction. Because I need to time this shot just perfectly, I'm actually going to pull out a cable release and attach that to my camera, because what I want to be able to do is actually wait until the streetcar is a little bit into the frame and then take the photo and let it vanish, so that rather than having light trails coming from all the way from the left side of the frame, I have them just right after where the CN Tower is in my frame. So I've got my cable release hooked up and I'm just kind of draping the cable over the camera. In order to use this properly, what I'm going to do is just take off my 2-second timer, and I'm actually going to take the shutter speed to bulb, which on Sony's is you just go past 30 seconds, like longer than 30 seconds, you get bulb mode. And what that'll allow me to do is it'll both allow me to, start my shot whenever I want using the cable release, but also it'll allow me to stop my shot whenever I want, rather than letting the camera control my shutter speed entirely and just sort of wait for it to time out and turn off. I'm actually going to control this with the cable release. Now, there's an interesting thing that happens with shutter speeds when you get to like the 5, 10, 20, 25-second range is that, the difference between like a 5-second exposure and like a 7-second exposure really isn't significant. And so you can actually focus on just getting the composition that you want of the light trails and, adjust the exposure a little bit later in Lightroom or whatever tool you use. So I've just kind of framed up a shot that's going to be a little bit strange. This is going to be very bright in the foreground, which is usually something I avoid. And then obviously the sky is pitch black, so it's going to be very dark, maybe a little bit of light pollution from the city. There's a couple of clouds over there. They might catch the light, but either way, this is kind of be reversed in terms of exposure from what I usually shoot. Normally this is like a dark foreground and a brighter sky. Additionally, there's quite a lot of noise in the frame. There's like these wires that help power the streetcar, and I've got like street lights and all sorts of other little posts and things all over the place. So I've really got to compose this so that it's got some strong leading lines and that any of those posts are just kind of leading up to where the CN Tower is. Okay, I'm going to go for like maybe 12 seconds of exposure. We'll see exactly what happens here. All right, here it comes. Ready? Ready? Okay. And go. All right, I think it might have been a little bit late. Light says 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And see how it looks. So what I wanted was for this to be a little bit more over in this direction, which means I've got to wait for another streetcar. I think I might just try 3 or 4 and see where it goes.
Okay, this is the final image that I got, and really what I want to talk about is this side over here where the lights tend to break up a little bit. When you use this technique of starting the light trails a little bit into the frame, I think you get some additional options here, because rather than bisecting the frame and creating a line that cuts the frame in half, you end up with kind of a compositional element that, sort of leads off into one direction. What I like about this is that the lines of the light, of the long exposure, the light trail here, yes, they overlap with the CN Tower, the sort of main subject, but also they create what I think is actually a stronger subject, which is kind of this area right here, where the lights all come together and you kind of get an idea of like what this might actually be once you see, that this is sort of a sign and you're clear that this is like streetcar or train tracks, that type of thing.
Well, thanks very much for watching. Bye for now.